Hello, everybody. Today I'm here with Gopal and Nick from the band Pacer. Welcome, guys. Nice to speak with you.
Hello. Good to be
Hello,
here.
thanks for having us.
So, I got to share an interesting story before we jump into it for context for anybody who's listening, because my relationship with Pacer goes way back. When I was about 13, 14 years old, you guys came to play at my school, and that was probably one of the first rock bands that I had ever seen play live. I don't think I'd been to a concert before that. And at the time, I was kind of starting to play guitar and dabble in music and whatnot. And I was just mind blown when I saw you guys. It was like one of the greatest experiences, in my young life at that point. And it kind of transformed me because then I got more serious about music, started playing more. Fast forward about 10 years, I'm playing in my band, and oddly enough, Gopal sees me, sees my band playing at a concert, and approached us afterwards, and kind of told us that he liked us and expressed interest in kind of like helping us out on a management level to some degree. So that was cool. That was like our my reunion with Pacer after having first seen them like a decade before. And one thing led to another. We my brother who was drumming for us left the band, and Gopal filled in, and things just kind of clicked. So, he played with us ever since. And then fast forward about 10 years from then, and Pacer is getting back together after what, 15 years of a break. So things have kind of come full circle. And having seen you guys play at your first show back, I was kind of inspired all over again. I felt like a 14-year-old all over again, being like, oh wow, like I really want to get back into this because I hadn't the last gig I played was over a year ago. Because since my son was born, I kind of took a step back from music to just focus on family stuff, which has been great in its own way, and kind of needed, I guess, in some sense on my end. But my relationship with Pacer has been kind of cyclical and I don't know, synchronistic in some ways. So I was really looking forward to talking to you guys to see, what inspired the reunion and just talk about, how the band started and where it's going.
Well, first off, that's a great intro, and obviously I've heard that story from you ages ago. It's always good to hear it again. But I do remember when I saw you guys for the first time in March of 2012, and we hadn't met initially. It was me and Brandon who were talking after the gig, and we kept in touch. We had done even a jam, and I was just trying to help book you guys some gigs, and I had no idea that your brother was eventually going to leave the band. And I remember even trying to find you guys some what I would hope would be some serious drummers that would fill in, and it didn't work out. And then ultimately you told me, well, why don't you just come and jam with us? And that's when you revealed the story of having seen Pacer back. I was Laval Catholic, I believe.
Hmm.
So this should have been 2004. So we're looking at 20 years now.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I was happy to join Chair Warriors, and that's been a great ride. And part of why me and Nick, well, we've been in touch throughout ever since Pacer kind of went on hiatus back in, I'd say, 2009, 2010. We were in touch throughout, and he knew that I was playing with you and other people. And that's something that I would always bring up to him and say at some point, it'd be good for us to get those songs out of the vault again and do it just to reconcile all the time and energy that I didn't put into doing it, and the fact that I know the material is still really good. It always stands up, it's fresh, and I've always had people throughout the years in this just strangest places either send me a message, or I'll run into somebody somewhere, or I'll be doing a pub gig somewhere and someone will say, weren't you in that band Pacer? Because they would have seen us, whether it be at a venue or a high school, or when we opened for Trapt at the Spectrum, which sadly doesn't exist anymore, back in 2003. There were a variety of really cool milestones that happened in the time that I was in the band, because I wasn't an original member. I only started in 2000 with them. So between 2000 and 2006, I was the new guy. So in that time, there were a lot of cool things that happened. And hearing that you had seen us amongst many others, well, like you said, it's come full circle because I got to be in Pacer and then play with you and Brandon, which has been a great experience. And along the way, talking to Nick, back to the initial point was, I said, at some point we need to do this again. He was just, I guess, much more open to the idea right now. I've always wanted to do it, but it's always hinging really on other members and other key members who wanted to really do this. And I did want him to be there to be singing. So when he finally came and said, yeah, I think I really want to do this, well, that was the impetus really for this all slowly getting back together. So
Cool. Yeah. So like what exactly, how did it happen? Like what was the catalyst that started the reunion?
It's always Gopal. Gopal
wow.
never dropped the enthusiasm, just like you pretty much said. And yeah, I wasn't very interested. I had almost stopped singing altogether for a few years, and I used to smoke, and so I wasn't taking myself seriously. And eventually, one thing at a time, I stopped smoking. I started taking care. Then eventually, I got back into singing. I learned how to play classical guitar. So little by little, I was singing more and more crooner style songs. And then, like Gopal said, when he said, maybe it's time we do this again, I jumped at the opportunity. It'd be silly not to. Life is too short.
So what
Yeah,
is
because
it?
in fact, well, I'll just interrupt. In the summer of 2020, when there was not much going on, and we'd actually be sitting around in his backyard with some other friends, we'd be throwing around, just talking about music and talking, reminiscing about the past. And since we were in touch, of course, the topic of the band would come up. And that's when I said, "Hey, there's nothing going on. We're living in this weird doomsday apocalypse type scenario that at some point we're going to come out of one way or the other. I think maybe we should do this, do this music thing again." And that was the summer of 2000. And I know the idea came out again in 2001. We didn't really broach it. It was just an idea. But the fact that 4 years ago it was kind of thrown out into the universe, it just kept coming back. Because just because I was thinking it doesn't really mean anything. Once I say it and then others take to the idea and want to move forward with it, so be it. And we were also hanging out a lot with our bass player who was in the band before I was in it, I guess from the late 90s up until 2006, Nicholas Piramali. And he'd be hanging out with us and he'd be like, yeah, that would be a cool thing to do. So 3 out of the 4 members from, let's say, 2004 onwards, let's say 2004 to 2006, were kind of hanging around that table. And we just figured, look, it's been a memory for so long, just for kicks. If we could do it, that would be great. And we did talk to our guitarist at the time, well, who had been with us throughout that time several times to want to do it. He didn't want to do it. Totally cool. And then we had a young friend of ours, Stefano Proietti, who I've been playing with in a band called Amavi. I met him in the summer of 2020. So he heard the music and said, I love this stuff. I'd love to see you guys do it again. And he said, if I can't be a part of it, it's obviously I want to be a fan. I want to see it happen. But if that doesn't happen, if there's any way I can play guitar in this, would you have me? I said, hey man, if you want to do it, if you can convince the others that this is something they all want to do, I want to do with you, we were more than happy to do it. I was always ready to happy to do it and ready. And then I know Nick was totally on board because he got to know Stefano, and Stefano got along with all of us really well. And I was already playing with him, so it was just a natural progression to give it a whirl. And long story short, everything clicked right away, and we ended up learning a set really quickly. We only started looking at this stuff in November of 2023, seriously, after sitting down and saying, okay, what do we want to do? And it was, again, for fun. There's no aspirations of a career or anything else. This was really just for fun. And that's why it's really rolling again, because we're not thinking about anything. There is no really, music industry the way I thought I understood it back then. I didn't understand anything back then. I was just hanging on for dear life, trying to figure things out when it came to booking gigs, networking with people, figuring out what merchandising is all about, and trying to contact managers and all this other stuff. What little information I gained, I tried to put into the band for years, and I helped in a way to allow the band to find a path and network and be able to succeed in doing what I thought were some great material and do some really cool shows and make some great fans along the way. And I also, in my own way, brought that to Chair Warriors, which was another really great accomplishment because we've managed to go and do so many great things since. And it was a whole other, industry, a whole other reality. I was older. I'm even older now. So going back to one of your initial points, how is it like going back into Pacer now? Well, I'm still approaching it like I'm 24 all over again in the year 2000, meeting them for the first time. Because it was for fun too. I wasn't thinking about a career when I met them. When I realized how fun it was and how quickly material was coming together and the quality of the material and how quickly things were improving as far as songwriting, arranging, rehearsing, I was becoming a much better player too because I hadn't played in too many bands seriously prior at all. I was always just woodshedding and listening to a lot of muso stuff, prog fusion stuff, rudiments. I was not good at playing in the context of a band. I wasn't listening to other people the way I should have, even though I loved songs. I love classic rock. I love great songs. All the prog rock stuff is great songs, but I wasn't very good at doing that. I was overplaying. I was probably nowhere near as tasteful and tight as I should have been. It took me some years to really get that. And then when I started improving and really fitting, I was like, man, this could actually be something. Also because I wasn't where I needed to be, and I finally kind of got there, and we all got better together. And we had worked with a producer. We had, done a lot of shows by then. So by 2002, 3, 4 onwards, I really felt, okay, this could be something. So then my mindset changed from it being fun to more business. But now I'm back to, fast forward to 2024, and I'm a lot older. I feel like I'm still that guy who's just 24. So when you said you felt 14 again, well, for me, I feel 24 all over again. And it's ironic because we're 24 years after me having been introduced to this group and saying, I'll give it a try. It was more for fun. I didn't have any aspirations. And look, it went on for years. And now it's back, and it feels like there hasn't been much of a break. So that's how I view the whole thing, is just fun with a bit of a break and back to fun. And that's it. Forget all the other headaches and the other trying to network with people and look at suits and ties and business and labels. I don't care. If the material's great, and if somebody wants to do something with it on a licensing publishing end, I'd always be open to that. With any other, projects I've been a part of too, where I've liked to be a part of really good songwriting. So that's where I think things are still showing promise, and the material stands up. It's fresh. It'll go on forever, long after I'm dead. So by playing it and keeping it alive, it benefits everybody who was ever a part of this thing. Keep it going, whether you can be there or not. If I couldn't be there tomorrow, I tell the guys, go for it. Keep doing it, man. I'm happy. I just want to see it go. Pacer is bigger than anything, just like Chair Warriors is bigger than anything. Any other projects I'm a part of, just keep it going. Throw it out into the universe. It's like throwing spaghetti on the wall. Something's going to stick. So as long as you do it because you love it, that's it. So that's my whole mindset to this thing. There's nothing more contrived or calculated about anything. I'm still just figuring it out, throwing spaghetti at the wall and hanging on for dear life, and that's it.
I guess it's one of the cool things about music, that you can take a break for so long and then just jump right back into it, and it's like nothing's changed, because it's not one of those things. It's not like being an athlete, right? Where you take a break for 10 years and then you're lost. You've lost it. There's no way that you can come back.
Yeah,
but music is totally
especially
not
in
like
really
that.
physical sports. Yeah. And even though drumming, yes, is a physical thing, it's not like playing football or rugby or anything crazy like that. No. So the fact that I really have always been thinking about these songs, the muscle memory and just the regular memory of these songs and what they meant and how we put them together, it's all still very fresh. So bringing it back has not been very hard at all. It feels great, and I'm happy people were able to come out in April for that really quick impromptu gig that really fell into our laps just a week and a half, 2 weeks prior. That was on a Sunday of all things, and people still made it out, which shows that even on a really weird night, and weren't even summer yet with great weather, people came out in good numbers and they were singing the songs, and hopefully it just sets a precedent for more stuff to come, which should only be bigger and better and still just keep fun as its raison d'être. It's fun at its core, and that's it.
It seems like the reception's been really positive and strong. Like, have a lot of people who listened to you guys back in the day and followed you back in the day come out to cheer for the reunion? Have you noticed that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, go
yeah.
for it.
There were also there was a new group of people that I met recently that were very excited because they knew about the band, but they only heard a few of the recordings online. I showed them the My Rain video, but when they saw us, they were blown away, and now they're gonna come to every show. They were excited about the one we had last Thursday, but unfortunately it got canceled because there was water damage in the bar.
I was going to be there. I was
Yeah.
disappointed.
I know. Thank God we found out 48 hours in advance. The owner called me panicking, and I said, "Yeah, man, deal with your insurance stuff, clean it up. Not a rush, not a problem. It just means that we were supposed to do it at another date. Just push it forward. We'll have more time to push it rather than this too was very what, 2 weeks prior, like me and Nick had actually gone and checked out the place and it looked cool. The owner was cool, wanted to do it. But of course, plumbing issues. And we had had all that heavy rain on the Monday that I think what it was for all the plumbers out there, it was like a backwater valve issue that led to a sewer thing. So I was like, nope, no one's getting in that building right now. You take care of it and we'll come back when the time is right. Not a big deal. So
But it
So
was fun though to see a lot of faces from the past at that reunion
for
gig. It
sure.
was really cool. There were a lot of surprises, a lot of people we hadn't seen in years. We were very pleased to see that night.
Yeah, it's cool that music can bring people together like that you haven't seen. It's like a reason. It's almost like, when you go to a funeral or something and you see people that you haven't seen in a long time and you're like, "Oh, it's too bad that this is the reason why we have to see each other." But music is the opposite. It's like such a
Yeah.
great reason to reunite with people that you haven't seen for a long time. And I find that there's relatively few things like that in life where you can reconnect with people, but so it's kind of a unique thing.
yeah, so I guess weddings and music, like shows and
Yes.
other things around art, anything that's positive. Because you're right, the other things a bad circumstance, but yeah, there are only a handful of things that can whip somebody back like a time machine so that they can feel what they felt now. Sorry, what they felt then now. And they feel like they haven't missed anything. Like you said, you felt you were 14 all over again. And again, you saw us 20 years ago.
Hmm.
Same thing for me playing this stuff 20 years later, more, even 24 years later. Not much has really changed. And luckily, because I've just been playing all the time, it kept me still very loose. My technique is still good. I'm much better now, again, listening to songs and being able to play within the context of a band. So my goal is now that I'm doing this stuff all over again, is to actually do it considerably better than I did it back then. And I thought that when I really was hitting my stride by '04, '05 and doing it and being a better listener more than anything and understand dynamics and feel and placement, well, that should be even better now. That's my hope, and I'm very confident that is the case. So, like I said, I feel like I'm just hitting my stride again, not just with this material, but music in general, because you never stop learning. And despite the amount of years that have passed, it's a blink of an eye, not just in my life, but compared to other people who've been playing way longer than me and have done so much more. So there's no excuse to not embrace the material again and to do it with a better mindset of just really focusing on the tastefulness of it, placement, tact, all that kind of stuff. So it just really gels better and comes off better, and more people will vibe with it, possibly because they'll just feel it that it's more together. And that's also what a break sometimes gives. Get more perspective. You're not just doing it, going through the motions like it's a chore.
Yeah, that's true
So
because we all know how it feels to, over rehearse and over practice and, things get stale and you're playing the same songs over and over again for years on end and it just kind of gets boring after a while.
yeah. And in original music, we all know that you don't really make a lot of money unless you quote unquote hit it big, whatever that means, right? So few people have done that I know, that's for sure. I know people do. I don't know too many that have. And I just do a lot of stuff for money. I do this full time now, and I do a lot of pub gigs. I'm just lather, rinse, repeat. I play a lot of the same stuff. It's still always fun because I'm still playing, but it's not stuff that I've written. So I'll play it my way, and you find as many different permutations to that song to keep it fun. But in the end, it's never the same as playing your own stuff. So that's another big reason why it coming up at this time, at this juncture, made a lot of sense because I have become the last 5, 6, 7 years much more of a jukebox. And that's great. It's working my memory, and I just do know a lot of songs from a lot of different eras. And I play with a lot of great pub musicians who just bring it. These singer guitarists, they have such great delivery and repertoire. And I'm just an accompanist, but I've learned a lot doing that kind of gig. But I'm always thinking, man, all these songs I'm playing, wouldn't it be great to play something that I got to play a small role in helping to create and, at least make a couple of bucks doing that. but that's what we don't get to do, and that's not why I'm doing Pacer. But by keeping it alive, if a couple of bucks can come finally along the way, well, all the better. And it'll only happen if you keep the band going. If you just keep it as a memory, you're forgotten. There's so many other really, really cool bands coming up all the time. Every day there's something coming up with, especially now with people having home studios, right? And that's been for years now. You have a good Cubase or whatever, another Dodge or your house, and you know how to use it, and you're creative, you're going to put music out. So you're going to get forgotten unless you're out there. And even when you're doing it, it's so hard to be heard. So you got to be out there just doing it, and that's another reason why we're doing it. It's to keep the music alive, keep it fun and fresh. And I think with all the I don't know how to say this, people being stuck in their homes the last 4 years, and a lot of the anxiety, a lot of the stress, a lot of the darkness that is kind of shrouded planet Earth, I think it's good to bring some very positive, heavy, fun music back to just change frequency, because in the end, everything is frequency, and this is part of why we're here, is to do that, to throw this into the universe. It'll hopefully touch the collective consciousness in a positive way without sounding arrogant or lofty. I think that's very important. Music does that. And if you can play one tiny, tiny microscopic role in that, well, you've done something very profound, and that gives purpose.
Couldn't agree more. And I think that you mentioning that fun is at the core of it also plays a part in that, because your intentions are pure. The goal is to have a good time. And that was clear when I saw you guys play your first gig back. It looked like you were all having fun. It looked like everybody there was having fun, and
Exactly.
It was great.
That was the most important thing. It's action, reaction, give and take. And, we had a great time, and the set was short, but to the point, and it went off really well, and people really dug it, and they're asking for when's the next one. That's all you can ask for in the end.
So I know that you've been playing constantly. You never really took a break from music, but Nic, I want to know what brought you back after you mentioned having not played and almost given up on singing. What was it that brought you back to music?
I think picking up classical guitar and learning songs that were a little less hard to sing. Uh, just time. I guess it was just time. I needed time, and got back into it. I didn't feel 24 again the first time I jammed with the guys. I got to tell you that. But after 3, 4 practices, it all came back. It was perfect. It was just a little harder to hit because singing rock music is a lot more demanding than singing stuff that's exactly right in my range without doing any compromises. But it all came back, and now I feel 24 again.
Yeah, it looked like you didn't miss a beat. Honestly, I was super impressed.
I was a little nervous, I got to tell you. I was hanging on the mic stand with both hands for dear life. But that was just the first gig. Now I'm good.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more. Why don't you guys take me back to some of the highlights of Pacer's earlier days?
We need Gopal's memory for that.
Gopal has like a machine-like memory. This man remembers dates with such
Yeah,
precision.
I've been very lucky. I am part cyborg, so fitting in this weird AI metaverse, even though I don't like it, it kind of works. Yeah, well, so many things. Look, I liked the fact that when I joined, things really gelled. And the first song we started hatching together was Face Down, which has probably become the most recognizable song that the band has. And that was coming together within weeks of me jamming with the guys. But there's been so many other really cool things along the way. We got to open for this alternative rock band called Trapt in November of 2003. As I said earlier, at the Spectrum that no longer exists. That was a great gig. We did a ton of high school gigs, where one of which you saw us at. Ultimately, we're 60 high schools and colleges, including some universities here in parts of Ontario, parts of the Maritimes. We got to spend 5 weeks in the Greater Toronto area in 2005 and really work the scene there. Went to the Maritimes later that year as well in November of 2005. And in the latter part of the group's existence, we actually went to Japan and got to spend about 10, 12 days there, did 5 gigs, 5 cities. It was just a great experience. and something we never thought would happen. And it was actually the miracle of technology, because back then all we had was MySpace, and we had some people that were checking us out on MySpace and referring us to this cool label called Zestone Records, and they wanted to do a pressing and distribution deal of the full length record we did called the Integral 002. And then we managed to get out there in 2008 in February, which was an incredible experience. But aside from that, just the creation of the music, the gigs, all the bands we have networked with, because Pacer was, I think, one of the rarer breeds of bands that was able to play with bands more on the softer side of things, and was also liked, respected, and was playing with bands on the heavier side of things. So we would say yes to anything, anytime. There was a very strong DIY punk rock ethos to the band, even though it wasn't a punk band, but there were a lot of punk influences, just like there were a lot of alternative rock and even some very mild prog rock elements of playing with odd time signatures, a lot of interesting stops and starts, but keeping everything really concise, which was more of a pop thing. So I found this band was really a fusion of a variety of really cool things. So to me, all of this comes together. Of course, there's a lot of other great stuff that happened along the way. I even got us this weird gig at the car show in 2005, playing at the Olympic Stadium, and we went right after a swimsuit competition. So obviously, for the first song, we had a lot of people. But then people were like, okay, it's just a rock band and no one is dressed provocatively here. So then they dispersed to look at the girls in the cars. But we played at the Big O. It sounded huge. I remember doing the sound test, and it sounded like I was playing When the Levee Breaks, just to get that giant Bonham kind of feel in a room that big. I was like, oh man, that's what it feels like. So for one song, people were there. After that, I saw all the booths and the cars, but we played at the Olympic Stadium, for the record.
That's huge. The venues don't get bigger than that, I don't think.
No,
Like,
exactly.
especially
It's
around
still
here.
fun to do. Yeah.
That's awesome. You mentioned MySpace. It's so funny because one of the memories I have after seeing you guys play for the first time was going home and going on MySpace and listening to Face Down. So can't confirm that that's the song that stuck with me. And yeah, it was cool to hear you guys play it again. And honestly, both of your albums, I've gotten those have been on my gym rotation so much. Like
I remember
it's
you
great
telling me,
workout
yeah.
music. Yeah, terrific. So like fast forwarding back to today, unless Nick, did you have any highlights? I totally skipped over
No,
anything that you.
I'm good. I'm pretty sure Gopal mentioned the Scouts gig, right? That was one of my
No, you know
favorite
what?
moments.
That's a great one. Mention it. Talk about it in the summer of
Really?
2007. Yeah.
Well, I didn't even know what it was really.
Yeah. It
We
was called
get
the
to
Canadian
this,
Jamboree.
yeah. So
Every
I'm
five
thinking
years, they
we're
do that.
playing in front of 100, 200 people, but no, we get there. They give us a trailer,
Yeah.
and then we're in this cafeteria, and there are so many kids freaking out. What is this? This is where's the stage? We see the stage. Like, okay, this is cool. It's going to be something like at Mont Tremblant that we did back in the day. It's going to be a few hundred people. It ended up being multiple thousands, and it was as far as
Yeah.
we could see, there was just a crowd everywhere. I
Yeah.
think
This
you
was
you
in
posted two pictures of that
two.
on the
Exactly. There are two pictures.
whatever was remaining.
This was called the Canadian Jamboree. This is something that the Scouts organization would do, I believe, every 5 years. So they chose that particular year to come up to Mille-Îles, Quebec, which is not too far from Saint Jerome. And I was messaging the Girl Guides, the Boy Scouts. I was just trying to think outside the box and find gigs in just not the traditional, rock bar, especially after the high school thing had gone so well for years. And I was saying, where are young kids? Where do they go? What do they do? That's the target audience. We have to go to them. And by imposing ourselves in the high schools, which was so good, I said, man, Boy Scouts, Girl Guides, all these kinds of things are where kids go. So I did reach them, and they said, well, you're hitting us up at a really good time because we do this thing called the Canadian Jamboree. We're going to have you guys play at the closing ceremonies. So we played up there, and there are kids who were part of the Scouts from all over Canada and even parts of the States. This was a big event for them.
And the
So
world too.
yes, but I think the one that really brings people out every 10 years, that wasn't this particular one, but it was still big. So when we went on, they already told us that a bunch of the kids had started leaving and going back to work, different parts of Canada or wherever, but we still had, when we went on, close to 6 or 7,000 kids.
Oh my
It
God.
was unbelievable. And ironically enough, there are some kids who were from Vancouver who saw us there, and I took some pictures with them, and they're still on my Facebook. I still talk to them. So it's years, 2007 to now, and they still remember, and they were really happy that the band right now is still coming back in, a different iteration, but still the music is bigger than whoever's there, and they're just happy to see it alive. So they remember, they're happy, and they're out in Vancouver. So I can just imagine other people who've moved to different parts of the world, like Europe and Asia, Africa, wherever, who still care about these songs and this music, even if they can't physically be there at a gig. That's what's really great. And I've been over the years, as I said, I've been playing with you, and I've seen you, grow up and have a job and have a great wife and kids and doing all this stuff. And you're way more of an adult than I am, really. So I have all these other adults too that are now doctors, lawyers, engineers, athletes, other musicians. And that's probably, when you look at it, probably the most satisfying thing, to say that me just going boo poo pa like a barbarian inspired somebody to do music, hopefully better than me, and also just have a life and still remember this stuff. I'm like, really? I haven't really evolved very much. I'm still just going boo poo pa, just trying to do it better. But other people have gone on to do really great things. And the fact that they'll still take a minute to write to me or stop me somewhere and say, hey man, I remember you, even when I'm doing some totally thankless, nondescript pub gig, with my snare and my brushes, and I know nobody cares that I'm there. I'm just there for the money and maybe the chicken wings. And somebody will be like, Pacer? I'll say, yeah, man. That's huge. So to me, all that stuff. There's no money in it, but my soul feels wealthy, and that's in the end what matters.
As it should. That's
Yeah.
great. I wanted to move on to what you guys are inspired by today. Because 20 years later, 15 years later, I'm sure you guys have listened to a lot of music since then. And so like what are your major inspirations today compared to when Pacer was first active in writing music, and how are they different?
Nico.
Nick.
Oh, okay. Well, I actually listen to a lot of, I just put some classical music and I put my headphones on and I try to unlearn everything that I know so that I can approach it from a totally fresh perspective. I'm also, the only thing I listen to with words is music from the, I'd say 30s to 60s.
Really?
Yeah, that was just, it just happened that way. I didn't plan it. I don't have the radio. My radio broke in my car and I never fixed it. So I never know what's playing right now, what bands are big or whatever. So I just have classical music on my phone and some crooner stuff
That
and jazz.
surprises me, to be honest, because classical and jazz and instrumental doesn't get much more different from Pacer. So where's the connection? Like, how do you go from one to the other?
Well, if you listen to Constant and you take out the music and you just listen to my melody, you can make a crooner song out of that.
Wow, that's so
Check it
cool.
out next time.
So I know that what you said about the no vocals strikes me, because I know that you're big into movies too, and that you've spoken to me about silent films and
Oh yeah.
all of this stuff. So like, what is it about that draws you to it?
The silent film, I think, you know what? It's the enthusiasm for silent films that made me appreciate classical again. Because when you watch a silent film, you forget at what everyone expects, Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton, what everybody knows about it. They're like, oh yeah, I know about that, but they don't know how deep and and influential they could be. When you plug your headphones and you watch an entire silent film, it's something other than a slapstick comedy for the first time. You feel like you've had a revelation, because in the end, it's, you don't hear any human voices, you don't hear any sound effects really. All you hear is music, and you're pretty much guided into this hour long or hour and a half meditation. And if you're not interrupted, you can't turn your head away because you won't know what's going on. There, like I said, there is no sound effect to remind you, oh yeah, okay, he's on the phone or something. Like, you have to pay attention the entire time. So you're connected to that art for the entire time. And I really thought that was something special. And during the pandemic, I actually started collecting them, all silent films. I think I have about 4,800, something ridiculous like that. And I know not a lot of people are interested in them, but whatever. There's a reason why it happened, and I'm still doing it.
So it's something about stripping things away that enhances the value in whatever that is, I guess, right? Like without the sound effects, without the voices, like you said, you have no choice but to pay attention. So it's the absence of those things that actually make you more engaged in it.
Yes, and then if you go deeper, then you get to books, which
Right.
are incredible. And if you read a book and you listen to silent music, then you you listen to, sorry, classical music.
Silent music is on
Yeah,
another level.
that's another thing. I'm not there yet, but that's a cool experience as well.
Oh, that's so awesome because like I said, you listen to Pacer and it's like it's loud, like, and the vocals and the lyrics to me are one of the key parts of it. And I find that even, all these years later, I don't know, it's 20 whatever years since your guys' albums came out, but the lyrics to me still sound fresh. Like they haven't aged poorly. They still sound relevant. And I'm curious about like what your inspiration was for the lyrics. Was there any process for writing them, or like where did that come from?
I would like to know. Honestly, I have no idea. I just put words together, and I always thought, okay, this is what that song means once I was done. And then a couple of years later, no, this is what it means. And I don't really have a set meaning for it. But every couple of years or every couple of months, I have a different meaning for every song almost.
That's cool. I
Like
love.
a decade later was, I found the meaning of it for it a decade later.
So it's always open to interpretation.
Exactly. But you can kind of guess it was always trying to break free from something, or um, being trying not to drink the Kool-Aid, even though people want you to drink the Kool-Aid. That's the general theme of the past songs.
I definitely get
Like,
that sense from listening to them.
I'm gonna see what the new ones are gonna be like.
Oh, so there's going to be new ones.
I hope so.
Okay, let's talk about that. What's the future of the band looking like?
Well, having fun writing music, like Gopal said, pretty much. There's nothing really planned, but I'm guessing a band writes, right?
Well, I
So
would hope so. I hope it's not just
exactly.
limited to a bunch of gigs, as cool as that is already. Would be great to hear more Pacer stuff, new Pacer stuff.
Yeah,
So yeah,
exactly. Just figured if we're all there and whoever's in the room has an idea, all the ideas are welcome. And then if something inspires uh, anyone else to then contribute to that idea and it moves forward, that's great. That would be, as you said, fun. So you're not just playing repeat, which is fun, but there's a place for that. Then you don't want to actually play too often because then people kind of heard it over and over again and they know exactly what to expect. I'd like to have a few new ideas in the pipeline at all times because you don't want to rush them. There's no way to know how long it'll take for something really great to come up or get finished. So just constantly throw ideas, see what happens, and that would be the only thing that would keep it relevant, because then it's just again a send up act, trying to always celebrate the past. No, I want to just think is now. All you have is now. We're bringing something from the past here. It's current now, but then what else? What else do we have now? What other statements can be made? What other cool riffs and beats and whatever can you throw together and say, oh, that's actually a song. It's not just ideas thrown together, but it's actually a song. So it makes sense and it can connect with people.
How did songs typically come together for you guys when you were writing in the past? Was it like, because I know that you understand how it's been with Chair Warriors, Gopal, like often, the roots of the idea will come from Brandon, our singer, and then he'll
Exactly.
he'll
Yeah.
bring that to the table, and then we'll all add our own parts to it until it's a fully fleshed out song. So that's typically how it goes. Was it similar for Pacer, with one person like doing the core of the songwriting and then bringing it to the rest of the band, or did you guys all contribute from the beginning?
Oh, when we were doing the Pacer stuff back in
Yeah.
the day, a lot of the riffs came from our original guitar player, Caesar. He would come up with something, and all of us would slowly start jamming to it. I'd throw a beat on there. We'd sit with the idea, would percolate. Eventually, Nic would come up with vocals and lyrics, and that would take whatever time it needed to take. So, again, timelines were very fluid, but they would usually come from a guitar riff, then maybe some sort of structure put to it with some sort of a beat, or maybe especially if it was already an odd time signature, which would happen often, we would just go with that and see how far can you go with it before it sounds like it's not a song or it's multiple parts thrown together. Then we just kind of flesh it out and do it. With Chair Warriors, you remember, we used to kind of do something similar. As you said, we'd go into a room, Brandon would come up with an idea, and then we'd add to it. But then it was a lot of just trying stuff out and going to weekly rehearsals and seeing what worked. Eventually we got to the point where he had that DAW set up in his studio, and we'd become much more efficient with writing. With Pacer, and I'm sure many other rock bands back then, without that level of technology that we have now, and the facility and just the skills of using it, and we didn't think about that. We just go in there and woodshed. So things usually came out that way. But in both bands, I can say that nothing has ever been contrived. Whatever came out just came out, and if we vibed with it and we said, yeah, this makes sense, we went for it. And again, along the way, some ideas didn't really make the cut, but I don't regret any of the ideas, because they had to happen so that the great ones could then get to the top, like the cream. So
Yep.
it's all a work in progress, leading to the best ones, kind of checking off all the boxes and sticking. Like even with us, Chair Warriors, there's been so many cool ideas that just stick on a drive as an idea. And you're like, yeah, we didn't really get to that. I still like it, but it's not as good as what we've put out. So the writing was always that way, very organic, never contrived, and would start, yeah, in a way where it's music first and then vocals and lyrics later. Like most bands, I think, from what I've heard.
Makes sense. I actually recently went through an old hard drive where a bunch of old Chair Warrior stuff had been hiding for a while, and I went back and listened to it, and a lot of songs that we played live that never got recorded, and it just jogged my memory. And I don't even think you were with us at that time when we
Probably
played some
not.
of those. So that'd be cool for you to hear. I'll send you some of those,
For
when I come
sure.
across them.
For sure. And there's always some nugget from the past somewhere where you're like, you know what, that little 5 seconds of that thing, which may not have gone anywhere in its totality, that 5 seconds is still awesome. Bring it today, make it today, and add to it, make it better. Because if something's great, I always believe it's a diamond, just polish it off and let it live today. Instead of saying, oh, it's from the past, throw it in the garbage. I'm like, no, we're here today. It's still relevant today. It's fresh. Let's go and let's do something with it. It celebrates the toiling away that was done before. And if it wasn't meant to walk and was just crawling back then, well, now it's going to be on its feet and walk, and then maybe even run. And then people say, oh man, that was totally worth the wait, because they don't know how old it was. You do. And you say, now it's finally here. It finally arrived. It's here the way it was meant to be heard and displayed. Great ideas, like all bands in the past. You don't know how many great things Beatles or Led Zeppelin and all these other bands were sitting on, even though those bands might have been around for only 10 to 12 years. So much stuff might have come from what they were all doing as teens. Who knows? So
Yeah, and once
that's
in a
the
while,
mystery.
you get one of those songs from the vault from one of those iconic bands that was never released, and then you get it like 40 years later, and it's like, wow, brand new stuff, but it was written like way back then.
Yeah, because it wasn't its time. It had time to percolate, and then now you're like, yeah, I actually do like this, or I know what to do to give it that extra 10 to 20% it was missing. Change this, tweak that, massage it a bit, but it's ultimately the same idea that led to this. That's the genesis of something really great. So I'm always interested looking at older things that just didn't have their day. That's because their day then wasn't the right day, but today is now. Might be great. Who knows? All you have is now. That's all you can do.
This is true. But speaking of the passage of time, so one of the really, I think, brilliant things that you did was, as you mentioned before, getting all of those high school gigs and realizing that your target audience was kids, and it made so much sense like around the early 2000s because CDs were still being purchased.
Merch,
Merch was being bought. Like it was a whole,
disposable income.
yeah, it
Yeah,
was a different era, and it was kind of the end. Like it was rather short
very,
period.
very short. Yeah, the musical landscape, the universe, what it was back then was just collapsing. People had more disposable income. They cared a little more about a physical product. Kids were more taken with live bands, or at least more impressed by them then. And again, the high school gig thing wasn't even really like, I wasn't even my doing at the beginning. It was something I'd thought about, but never did. We were invited to play at École Jacques Rousseau in Longueuil by this kid, Simon Trudeau. And I was like, this is so great that he's inviting us to do this because it's something I thought would be interesting, but I didn't look into it. I didn't do anything. But I said, this is perfect. This is being delivered to us. Let's just go there, do it, see how it goes. And if it works, which I was pretty sure it was going to work, I said, I know how to turn this on because I had already written a bit of a pitch as to how would I approach this? What would I do? What email, what fax, what would I do to get this rolling? But we need to test one. I'd never looked into testing it. So in very early 2004, this was proposed to us. And I was like, this is so great. This was the universe saying, you need to try this. We went, the invitation was really cool. We did it. It was a great success. And literally the next morning, I was sending out my pitch. I looked at all the French schools, the English schools, the public, the private. I just had a map of Montreal and Laval and was thinking of all the different cities I'd want to hit so we can hit as many kids as we could. So that later at the end of that year, we were able to do a really cool gig at a place that no longer exists called Lix. That's right across from Foufoune Électrique, where we filmed the My Rain video. And we had all these kids come in. They were wearing their Pacer merch, and we had a little photo booth where they do this, which was the cover of the Involuntary Movement EP. So we got them all, involved and participating in it. So it was that was a great lead up to all of that. And the high school gigs were, pun intended, integral to that happening. So that was a really good 6 months or so.
Yeah, and something that wouldn't necessarily be, well, I guess it would be possible today, but wouldn't have the same impact, I guess, because, much like the music industry itself, I guess kids are interested in different things now. And I wanted to get your take on like how the differences that you notice in music and I guess even just people's interests now versus then.
Well, you saw that because with Chair Warriors in my very early days playing with you guys in 2013, I did get us to go back to that school in Saint Leonard, the French one. I think it was called the École Saint-Exupéry. We played there, and Pacer had gone there, I believe, twice in the past, and the response was very different. It was very muted when we went back, and I don't think that was a consequence of what we were doing with Chair Warriors, but people were just not impressed the same way. We brought what little merch we had, and I don't think anything sold. So it was already very different from, let's say, 2004, 5, 6 into 2013, a 7-year gap. Now, I wouldn't even know how to approach it, especially with everyone being so weary of outside elements coming into their school and, people being scared for their health and crime and everything else, any other number of reasons. So I don't know. As far as interests, like I said, electronic music, Spotify, ringtones, all this stuff has really truncated people's attention span. So the concept of albums and just really long songs and things really developed, I don't think is all that popular in the mainstream. There are a whole slew of bands doing it, and that's why there is still a really vibrant prog rock scene, and there are bands, like Porcupine Tree, Radiohead, Tool, all these guys doing really long, well-layered songs, but they're big bands. Locally, I don't know of too many. I'm sure they're toiling away at it in the basement, as they should, but I don't think it'll get people, other than in a niche market, the way it might have been, especially when you go back to the 70s, where Genesis and Yes and King Crimson, that was normal fare on the radio, Supertramp and all this other cool stuff, long songs, orchestral stuff. Now it's, you listen to the radio and it's really short pop songs, very four on the floor, very cut to the bone with Pro Tools and Melodyne and everything else. I don't know. I don't know how this kind of music would even be received, other than people who love rock and maybe some punk and whatever else.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be an audience for
there will be
everything.
For sure, but not so mainstream. And yeah, the whole high school thing. Wow, I wouldn't even know how to. I'd like to do it again, but I don't know. I don't think it would be worth the time and energy to put it in.
Definitely a different world now. Nic, I'm interested to hear from you on that, because as somebody who doesn't have a functioning radio, what do you think of the state of the music industry? If you have any thoughts on it at all at this point.
I really don't. I don't know. Like I said, I was pretty much in a cave for the past 10 years or 15 years before maybe 2 years before the band formed again, I started coming out. So I don't know the state of the music industry. Even the stuff I listen to, I don't know what I'm listening to. I just have a whole bunch of different classical music and I randomly play it. I just want to swim in that variety of the beginnings of what music was. But
That's pretty great,
I
actually.
really don't know.
That's very cool, and it makes it so that your influences must be hard for people to even detect, because it's not like, you'll write a song and people will say, oh well, I hear, that latest, I don't know, like Tool song, as an influence in your music, but that wouldn't be the case for you because your
Well,
influences are far.
it was with the original Pacer and the first two albums because I was listening to Pearl Jam, Tool. I had a functioning radio, so whatever was playing on the buzz and on Showm constantly, I was listening to what was in at the time. Also, Thrice, System of a Down. It was a big variety of bands, but just right after, I'd say 2008, 2009. That's around the time my radio broke too. So that's when I didn't listen to music for a while, and then the silent film interest came and revived, and started listening to classical.
So interesting. Yeah, guys, is there anything else that you wanted to bring up related to Pacer or music or anything in general? Yeah, just to wrap it up.
Music is cool and people should play it. Pick up an instrument and don't worry about what people think. Listen to anything and everything and just do what you feel. It's never too late. And if you approach it with fun at its core, people will hopefully gravitate towards that and you will build an audience, even if it's an audience of like 4 or 5, 6 people, because the goal is to get your audience one person at a time. But it starts actually just with you. As long as you're feeling you're doing the right thing in the moment and it resonates with you properly, that's a success right there. So regardless of the style, yeah, I just want to see people getting out there and doing it instead of always being stuck to their devices and Netflixing and chilling. Like just go out there, play, participate. It's something very organic, very ancient that should be done. So that's about it. All I have to impart on people. Get out there and do it.
Absolutely. You mentioned, yeah, something ancient. It does seem like a tribal ritual almost, going out to see a concert. It's like, beating drums around a campfire type thing. It's
Exactly.
very similar to that when you think about it.
Yeah. That's why I just hit a drum. It's like so simple. It's like a caveman just chipping away at a piece of stone or taking wood and breaking it and whatever. I just do it. It's a very repetitive yet creative mathematical uh, primal experience that creates a sound, creates a frequency, and gets people to respond by resonating to it, and it creates a cycle. So that's what you do. It that's like going to a house of worship. Because I'm not a religious guy, but I like to think, especially the last 4 years, I've been thinking more about things on a spiritual level that I didn't before, and I see how, pun again intended, how integral music is to that. So it helps keep the pun intended, keeps the pace with your life. So
The puns just keep
I'm
coming.
exactly, and I'm not Punjabi, but close. There you go.
Awesome. That's a great way to wrap it up. Thanks so much, guys, for joining me.
It was fun.
It was fun. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, and
And
this is a good podcast. You've had a slew of really great guests on here, and I know you have a bunch more coming. And yeah, hope to hear more, and hope it keeps going for years to come.
I hope so too. I'm going with a slow and steady pace for now. No pun intended again.
Peace.
And yeah, I just figured that, why not leverage my music friends and musical
Of
contacts
course.
and colleagues and everything, because I've been so invested in that for so many years that it would only make sense to, utilize that network to kind of talk about music stuff, but also the other messages that I want to talk about, like, self-improvement and self-development and things like that, which ties in very well
Yeah,
with
of
what you guys
course.
are doing,
Yeah, it's
because
a good platform, and people, yeah, definitely should tune in and hear other, points of view. And it's good to have podcasts like this where it's about just talking, discussing, getting ideas out there, hopefully learning something. And that's all you can do, right? Everyone's trying to learn and get better and just apply themselves to the best of their ability and hopefully evolve, even if it's like 1 centimeter. Because that's really, at my age, I think I've only evolved about 3 or 4 centimeters in all these years. So it's good. I like to keep things simple and keep the pace. So I got to keep another 4 centimeters.
I think you sell yourself a bit short on that one, but
I am short, but it's okay. I own it. Prince was short and Prince was cool. So there you go.
Yes,
Closing
he was.
thoughts.
Yeah, if there's anything that I want people to take away from this, it's that, you know, if you think that it's too late to do something, it's not. It doesn't matter how long it's been, you know, if you've stopped, if you've put the instrument down for 20 years and are scared to pick it back up again, just do it. Life is short, like you guys said. And don't be afraid to try, because, you know, there really isn't any such thing as failure. I mean, failure is learning to me. And if you're succeeding at something, you're not learning. It's great to succeed, but you can only learn by failing. So there
and we have a song called Failure. Check it out on our Bandcamp. Everyone can hear us on pacermusic.com. We are on Facebook and Instagram with nascent profiles there, but everything's on the Bandcamp. Go check out the music. Hopefully you like it, and we'll see you at a gig at some point.
Absolutely. All right. Looking forward to that, guys. Thanks again for your time.
All right.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks. Later.
All right. Ciao.